One of the biggest challenges when we talk about hybrid project management is to manage stakeholders. In a hybrid project, we have different types of stakeholders. And in this video, I'm gonna show you how to best manage stakeholders in your project. We're gonna see how to identify key stakeholders in your project, how to engage these stakeholders in your team, and how to best communicate with your key stakeholders. Also, in this video, I will answer these questions about how to integrate stakeholders in a traditional and agile way. Stay with me, I'm Rogério Manso, and I will be your instructor in this video. Hello, welcome to another video series about hybrid project management. And in this video, I'm gonna show you about stakeholders management in hybrid environment. It's a very important subject that many professionals have been struggling with because they don't know exactly how to classify, identify, manage, engage different stakeholders for different parts of your project when you're gonna work on traditional and agile way. And in this video, I'm gonna show you everything you need to know about stakeholder management. And the first thing is to start understanding what is a stakeholders, how to define a stakeholders. In general way, I would say that stakeholders, it's all people who cares about your project. Everyone that have some interest, some positive or negative influence in your project, we call a stakeholder. By definition, we can say that stakeholders are individuals or entities that have an interest in a project, either because they are directly involved in the work or they are affected by the outcomes, or they have influence over its execution or results. This is the traditional definition of stakeholders. But when we call about stakeholders, we have different, let's say, types of stakeholders. We have one type of stakeholder that we call, they have direct interest in the project, that are the project manager, the team, the clients, and the sponsor. These people, these persons, they have direct impact, influence, and they are directly impacted by the project. We also have people that have indirect interest or indirect impact on the project, that are vendors, investors, local communities, government, or regulatory agencies that in an indirect way will impact the project. Like investors that will just put the money, but maybe they will have no interest in the result, in the outcome of the project. Vendors also could be impacted by the project. Normally, vendors could also be considered a direct stakeholders in your project if you are contacting directly these vendors. But you have also the competitors. And in the case of competitors, they are external stakeholders, partners, in any other type of people that are interested in the project. So you have direct people that are engaged, that they are working directly in the project, people that are working indirect with the project, and you have external persons that will be impacted by the project. It's important that to understand that effective stakeholder management can lead to better project outcomes. It's fundamental, it's key. Enhanced team collaboration and greater stakeholder satisfaction. One of the goals of any project is really to satisfy the key stakeholders in your project. How to differentiate primary and secondary stakeholders in hybrid project? By definition, you have these two kinds of stakeholders, the primary stakeholders and the secondary stakeholders. The primary stakeholders, they are directly involved in day-to-day activities of the project. Their inputs and feedbacks have an immediate impact. We are talking about the project manager, the project team, the clients and customers. The project manager is the person that have direct impact on the project, either on traditional or agile aspects. The project team, you can use the same team to both approach, or you maybe can split between agile and traditional components of your project. And the customer, it's important to get their feedback, especially in agile sprints that could influence the outcome directly. The secondary stakeholders have no direct, they are not directly tied to the project in everyday activities, but they can influence and be affected by its outcomes. We are talking about suppliers, regulatory bodies, generic public, and other people, concurrents and customers. In this case, suppliers could provide some necessary tools or resources they could help in terms of the agile or traditional iterations. The regulatory bodies, they are organizations where you need to pay attention in terms of the compliance, the rules, the laws, and the regulatory instructions that will affect your project, and the public in general that will be involved in your project. But why is stakeholder management crucial in hybrid projects? There's phrase, information that comes from the PMI's pools of professional that projects with excellent stakeholder management engagement are 50% more likely to be successful. When we talk about stakeholder management, we are talking also about communication, satisfaction, and results. And that's why it's so important to manage well the stakeholders in your project. Stakeholder management is the systematic identification, analysis, planning, and execution of actions designed to engage with individuals or groups who can impact or be impacted by a project. So this is the how to manage stakeholders. We need to identify the stakeholders. We need to make an analysis in terms of the influence, the impact, the power. And we have to plan how to communicate, how to engage these people and execute these actions so these people have a bad impact, a better engagement in your project. When we talk about the stakeholder management, we are trying to avoid some dual expectations. So hybrid projects combine agile and traditional components, and they have different structures in terms of iteration with stakeholders. So you need to understand what are the stakeholder expectations on each of these components of this approach, because they are different. The expectations in an agile approach is different than a traditional approach. Also, we are looking for continuous feedback. It's important, especially in agile, in components, that we get frequent and short engagement with the stakeholders to get some feedbacks, some comments to improve the outcome. And also we try to get some predictability and reporting informations in terms of the project status. So traditional stakeholders, for example, they expect regular updates and a certain degree of predictability that it's different from the agile component. So when we talk about continuous feedback, we're more related to agile, and we are talking about predictability, we are talking more about traditional way. And finally, we need to manage change. These two approaches, traditional and agile, deal with change in a different way. And it's important that to understand which stakeholder is interested on each component of your project. So you can adapt the change process to each stakeholders. You need to really get the buy-in for each stakeholder on each approach. When I talk about stakeholder management, we navigate in a hybrid terrain. So we have parts of the project that are managed in a traditional way, parts of the project that are managed in agile way. And this sometimes could result in a confusion in terms of these stakeholders and how to proceed, how to move inside the project to get the right information, to get the right action. And that's why we need to adapt some communication style for each component in your project. So when you talk about agile, we need to emphasize short iterations, quickly communications, daily stand-ups, iterative feedbacks, which will keep the stakeholders continuous engaged. In a traditional way, it's a little bit different. Normally you go with milestones, weekly reports, so we get this communication with the stakeholder in traditional way in a more large timeline. Another point is how to define the expectations in terms of these reports. So when we talk about agile, we try to provide information in a more frequent way than the traditional way. And in terms of the velocity of change that happens in your project, normally when you talk about the traditional components, we know that the change will not happen frequently. And we don't need to provide much or many information so frequently. But when you talk about the agile components, we know that this could change every day. And that's why we need to provide information more frequent. So the change velocity that happens in your project will also help you to define in which velocity, in which frequency you're going to communicate with your stakeholders. And another point very important is resource allocation. Especially if your project use the same resources to work in traditional components and agile components, adaptive components, you need to understand how to allocate this resource in your project. It's important that when we are managing the same resource in two different approaches, the engagement is different. The communication, the level of communication is different. The frequency is different. So it's important that when we define that we're going to work in a hybrid environment, that we also pay attention in how we're going to assign resources on the project, and by consequence, these resources that will become stakeholders, that are stakeholders, could be the project team, customers, or any other users, will really be involved in your project. Why we need to really manage a stakeholder in an effective way? This is a simple question, but it's not clear for many professionals how important it is to manage stakeholders in a hybrid environment. When we talk, I would say that a stakeholder management can make or break a project. Depending on how you give importance, priority in this management, you can have different results. Let's say that you are really a professional that like to have an effective management in hybrid projects in terms of the stakeholders. So you need to make sure that everyone is aligned in terms of the project goals, the project visions, activities. So you need to reduce confusion and misalignment in terms of activities of your project. Also, when you have this management, you try to really improve the decision making. It's important that the stakeholders provide valuable insights, leading more informed decisions in your project. They need to help you to manage risks, get early feedbacks, we identify potential issues, leading to proactive mitigation. Everything will help you on risk management, and this will boost the morale of the team and all people involved in your project. You need to develop a clear communication and involvement that will lead to a motivated and engaged team. In another hand, if you really try to get a poor management of your stakeholders, you can have some problems, like, for example, misunderstandings in terms of the project objective, the project activities that will result in project delays or over budgeting. Also, you can waste the use of your resources. So when you are misalignment of your stakeholders' goals, this could result in a waste of time and effort. And by consequence, you're going to decrease the quality of your product, the quality of your services. And finally, you can damage relationships with these stakeholders. This will really create a better relationship with your team, with your sponsor, your vendors, your customers, and your users. That's why you really need to focus on stakeholder management to get a better efficiency in your project. When you talk about stakeholder management, we have clear benefits about this. First, it's enhancing collaboration and teamwork. When stakeholders are aligned and well informed, the collaboration becomes smoother and better. Teams from different components, different areas of your project will work in a harmonious way, no matter if they are working in a traditional or agile way. The second point is you have a clear project goals and vision. And this is very, very important. It's important that everyone in your project be in the same page. Everyone needs to understand the project objective, the project goals. What are the strategies? How the project are evolving during the time. So it's important that you involve stakeholders, to engage stakeholders on have a clear understanding about your project. Also, you're going to increase project efficiency. Having your stakeholders better engaged and better managed will really reduce the delays, will reduce the waste of time, the waste of resources, and especially will make your project progress faster and more efficiently because everyone is on the same page in your project. We have another very important benefit that is reduces scope creep. When you talk about the scope creep, especially in traditional methods, it's a big issue, a big problem. And when you have stakeholders on board, aligned with the project objective, and have a clear channel of communication between everyone, there are fewer chances that scope change will be done without the right process. It's not, you should not confuse scope creep with change in agile approach. Changes in agile approach are done to improve the result, to improve the product. Scope creep are lack of planning and lack of vision in terms of what your product, your project should deliver. And higher project acceptance rate. Of course, if everyone is happy with your project, with the activities, with the product, with the result, with the strategy, the performance, everyone will be happy. And this is a point that you're gonna measure to define the successful of your project. So when you work better the stakeholders, you have a lot of benefits that will really makes your project a success. How to identify and how to analyze the stakeholders. Remember, we are talking about a hard environment. So we have traditional and agile components of your project. And of course, the stakeholders should not be the same in all these components. And let's see how we're going to identify and analyze these stakeholders. When it talks about the stakeholder identification, we can follow a steps, a process to identify the stakeholders. The first is to list all potential stakeholders in your project. This is an initial brainstorm that you're gonna do with your team, with everybody that it's already assigned to the project, and you're gonna get a list of everyone who may be impacted positively or negatively in your project, or have any interest in your project. After you have this list, you're gonna categorize these stakeholders. So you're gonna divide these stakeholders based on their roles, in their influence, or any other criteria that it's suitable to your project. For hard project, it's important that the categorization be based on whether these stakeholders it's more associated with traditional or agile aspects of your project. So in addition to categorize your stakeholders based on the influence or the interest in your project, it's important that you identify stakeholders that are more related to the traditional components or the agile components. After this, you're gonna analyze in the influence and interest of each stakeholder. So define which stakeholders have the level of influence and interest of these persons in your project. This will help you to prioritize the communication and the engagement efforts on each one of these groups. And next, we're gonna determine how to engage. Determine a strategy to engage with these stakeholders. So based on this analysis that you did, you're going to determine how to engage these stakeholders or each group of stakeholders. You could have define regular updates or more long updates, a specific type of communication. So a specific type of decision making. Anyway, you're going to define how to better engage each group of stakeholders in your project. And finally, you're going to document and review and revise this process. It's important. Remember, we are in a hard project. So documentation is part of this process. So when you create, you should create a stakeholder register or any similar document or information. Could be a software that you're gonna identify, register these stakeholders, to identify the stakeholders, their interest, their influence, how gonna communicate, how to interact with these people, when and using which type of communication tool. So you're gonna have all this documentation in a single place. As the project progresses, it's important that you review this information and update this information as needed, because we know that the stakeholders frequently arrive and leave the project as the project evolves. In a hard environment, understanding both the agile and traditional stakeholders and their interest can significantly impact the project's success. I'm talking about stakeholders not only that are impacted positively by the project, but especially stakeholders that are impacted negatively by the project. And on each project, you're gonna have stakeholders that will have positive impact and negative impact, and it's important that you map all these stakeholders. Let me show you some techniques to identify stakeholders. There are many, but I try to list here 5 techniques that will help you, but there are not only these techniques, you can find other techniques that will help you to identify stakeholders. One that I used to do most, it's interviews, or one-on-one, could be in one-on-one or in group. But the interview, it's really the way for me that it's more efficient in terms of learning about the stakeholders and understanding their role in the project. The second is making some surveys. You can make some, distribute some questionnaires or make some question lists to gather that data on stakeholders' opinions, needs, and perceptions. You can use surveys if you want to get some information from stakeholders that don't want to be identified. So if you have some people, some group of stakeholders that like to become anonymous, you can use surveys so you get information, but not necessarily you need to know who are these people, and at the same time you can develop a strategy to communicate with these people. Another way is doing some brainstorming. Normally I start with some brainstorming with my team or people that are already assigned to the project, but in this case it's not brainstorm, not to only identify stakeholders, but also to understand the influence and the power and the interest that these stakeholders will have in the project. It's maybe the perception for different groups about different stakeholders are different, and that's why you need to discuss with each group to really get a correct perception about the interest and the power in your project. And documentation review, you can refer to lessons learned or any other documentation from previous project or contracts or documentation that are related to your project, organigrams in your organization. So every document, every source of information that will help you to identify the stakeholders involved in your project will help you to identify. And it's another technique is when you have to map the stakeholders. To map the stakeholders is when you try to create a visual representation to categorize and to understand the stakeholders' influence and interest. Let me show you an example about this stakeholder mapping. The stakeholder mapping could be something very, very simple, like this graph here, where you have the interest and the power, low and high, and you're gonna identify the stakeholders on each one of these quadrants. The quadrant that have stakeholders with high interest and high power or influence in your project, we called key players. So they must be fully engaged and managed closely. It's important to them that the job goes well, so they have a lot of control over it. So these key players have high interest and high influence or power in your project. The second group is the group that have low interest but high influence, high power. So this group you need to keep satisfied. So they need to be satisfied but not necessarily closely informed. Their influence is significant but their interest is low. The third group is the people that have high interest but low power. You need to keep these people informed. These stakeholders require good communication. Their influence may be low, but their interest in project outcomes is high. And the last group is the group that have low interest and low influence. You just need to monitor this group to make sure that they have the minimal information or effort they need or have a minimal influence and interest. As an example, here are some stakeholders for each group. The key players: senior executives, major investors, project sponsors. They keep satisfied: regulatory bodies and unions. Keep informed: project teams, end users, local community. And monitor: suppliers and general public. Maybe you can be asking why project teams are not as a key players. It depends on your project. If your project teams or members of your team have high power, they could be classified as key players. So these are examples, but not necessarily they are specifically on this position. You can have, for example, suppliers as a keep informed, as they are part of the project. They have high interest in your project. So the idea is that you analyze each stakeholders and classify these stakeholders in terms of the interest and the influence or the power in your project. When we talk about stakeholder management, we talk about engagement. It's important that you engage each one in your project, so they participate, they collaborate in the result of your project. So why engagement is vital in hybrid project management, in hybrid environment? When you talk about engagement, we can have two types of stakeholders. Stakeholders that are disengaged, so they are not really participating in the project, which could result in project delays, goals that are not attended or not matched, and especially unhappy customers. When you have engaged the stakeholders, it will improve the work, the collaborative work. We have collaborative solutions. They will participate in each phase of your project. We're gonna have aligned objectives, and we're gonna have a positive project momentum, which means that your project will run, okay, in a good process, in a good speed, like say, in a good momentum, without any interference of any stakeholders. So getting people involved in hybrid environment right away in the beginning will help you avoid common problems and use everyone's knowledge and experience to drive to innovation and excellence. When we talk about stakeholder, we need to adapt some traditional engagement techniques in agile settings. As I said, in a hybrid environment, we have traditional components and agile components that have different techniques, different approaches in terms of stakeholder engagement. Traditional techniques, we use formal reviews. The updates are based on milestones, and we have scheduled meetings. This is the way we usually work in traditional way. When you try to adapt these techniques to agile, we're gonna use different techniques. For example, instead of formal reviews, we're gonna use daily stand-ups and sprint reviews. Also, sprint reviews will help you to replace the milestone updates, where we're gonna define the result at the end of each sprint. And we need to motivate, to make people to be interested in providing spontaneous feedback sections. It's important that the people participate, especially in Agile, to collaborate on comments and feedback anytime they need. So embrace the flexibility of Agile without losing the foundational strengths of traditional engagement techniques. The idea here is that you can balance techniques that you can use on traditional way with techniques that you use in Agile way, and try to get this engagement adapted for each moment of your project or for each component of your project to get a better result. When you talk about engagement, we can use some tools and technologies to help us to deal with stakeholders. And the same way, we have some traditional methods like face-to-face meetings, project presentations, printed reports and handouts that we use more in traditional way. And today we have some more modern digital tools like virtual meetings, collaborative tools, and instant messaging. The point here is not to use this tool for a specific approach. You can use these two types of technologies, the traditional methods and modern digital methods, on traditional components and in agile components. And very important, especially in these days where we have most of people working in a hybrid model in your project, which means some people work at home some days and at the office on other days. So it's important that you start using some digital tools to increase, to improve this engagement, even if people are working at distance. But at the same time, you need to keep a certain way the engagement close when you are in the office with face-to-face meetings and collaborating people in a physical way. This will, strengthen the relationship between your project team. Blending old and new. So the secret to effective stakeholder engagement in hybrid projects. The same way that we defend that you can use different approaches to manage your project, you also can use different methods, different tools to keep your people engaged in your project. Let me try to give an example on how to engage stakeholders. This example. It's not fictive. It's real, but I had to adapt a little bit this history to be able to put in this training, in this video. But this really happened in a project that I was managing. The problem started when someone that were in the high position management that did not believe too much in the agile framework. So when we started the project, this person, this manager, was not really involved or not believing that using agile will really help the project. So what I did is I started providing him some reports, visual reports. I tried to really engaging this person on initially physical reports, and then we moved to digital reports, and finally we come to use a wall in the room, in the office, to show the project status. And all the time we try to ask some feedback of this manager, how they are enjoying this kind of communication. So we started providing information even in his tablet and his cell phone, using the portal to providing the status of the project. And the next step was to try to become inviting this manager to participate in some events like sprint reviews, daily meetings. So he also started participating in collaborating, in being involved with the team and learning about Agile. So at this moment, this person started learning about how to work. In this case was a Scrum framework. And he started participating and collaborating with the team in many meetings. And at the specific points, we even invited him to make some speech or presentations or giving some feedback for the whole team. So he becomes more and more involved, engaged in the project. So they really started understanding the powerful of Agile, the benefits working with Scrum, and we start breaking down the resistance of this person when we put this manager more and more involved with the team, until the moment that he was really someone really supportive to the project, and really someone that defend the use of Agile in many projects, in all projects, and understood, especially he understood the importance to be involved in the project, to be involved on the decisions, and this makes this person, this manager, that in the beginning were someone resistant to Agile, to become someone that now it's defending this way to manage. So it's important that you provide education, that you provide involvement, engagement to people that are resistant to your project. This is how you're gonna break this resistance and make this person get a good influence in your project. How to communicate with stakeholders? It's very important. I would say that the most important thing when we talk about stakeholder management, it's the communication. When we talk about communication, we need to understand again that we are talking about a project that have different concepts or different approaches, traditional and agile, and the communication on each moment is different. When we don't communicate, we don't have a clear communication, of course, you're gonna have some confusion on tasks and goals. You're gonna miss deadlines and we can increase misunderstanding. When we have a clear communication, we can have our team objectives aligned. We can deliver the project, the product in a good way, in a good time, and we can enhance team collaboration. Clear communication, it's obvious something very important on any kind of project, but especially in hybrid project. So it's not just about speaking, it's about being understood when we talk about have a clear communication. And when we talk about when you talk about clear communication, we need to adapt, to tailor this communication to different stakeholders. We have in a project clients that usually are more interested in cost and deliverables. We have developers that are interested in some technical details and tools. We have testers that are working on bugs and testing protocols. We have some executive people that are interested in progress and return of investment. We have the project team that are interested in task updates and team dynamics. So for each different stakeholder, they are looking for different information. And it's important that you provide this information in a regular manner to each one. So effective communication means meeting stakeholders where they are, not where we assume them to be. This is the secret to have a good communication. When you talk about communication, we have some best practice that you need to pay attention. First, the frequency of this communication. You need to keep regular updates while avoiding overwhelming stakeholders. It's not too much, it's not too little. You need to define the frequency of your communication depending on each group of stakeholders. The method. You need to choose the media that it's better appropriate for to transmit the message to this audience. Some stakeholders will require face-to-face interactions. Others will only require a quick chat. So you need to identify which method, which media you're gonna use to each group of stakeholders. And finally, the content. Be simple, be directed, and don't provide information that's not necessary to stakeholders. As simple as possible, as direct as possible. This will really get your stakeholders involved and interested in getting this report. Nobody hates nobody likes reports that are long, complex, a lot of technical words. They like something that it's straightforward to the point. They have a clear understand, and it's easy and don't waste their time in terms of getting this information. Let's talk about stakeholder expectations. We know that for each type of stakeholders or each group of stakeholders, we have different expectations. When we talk about expectations, we need to set realistic expectations. And how to do this? First, you need to understand the stakeholder vision. You need to have open conversations, open discussions, what their objective, what their interest in your project. You need to understand their priorities. Next, you need to project feasibility. Not everything desired by stakeholders can be implemented. You need to define what is possible within your time, cost, and resources that you have. It's important that sometimes you use some resources that are the most simple as possible. Even these requires a little more work to produce this information. Define clear documentation. Always have clear and written documentation about your project deliverables and timelines. It's important that you document everything that you're going to report to your stakeholders. You need to make some evaluations and check-ins with these people to make sure that they are really appreciating the communication. You need to understand if their expectations is answering by the report and the communication that you are doing. And always create a transparent communication between you and your stakeholders. If something cannot be done, or if there's a better way to improve, do it. Keep your stakeholders informed. Communicate it clearly and promptly. Don't wait. Don't hide any information from your stakeholders. Be clear. If you have some problems, show them. If you have some constraints, some difficulties to do something or to communicate something, make your stakeholders aware about this. Make this communication transparent to create trust between you and your team. It's very important that you balance flexibility with a traditional structure. When you talk about hybrid projects, we need to always pay attention on this balance and on these different ways to manage the project. We know that when we talk about balancing between agile and traditional, we know that most of the time we need to put some focus on the agile strengths. So emphasize agility, adaptability, and iterative feedback. This will really make the stakeholders more engaged in your project and allow you to promote quick change in your project. We also have some strengths in traditional way. So we have some, we need to pay attention in the structure of the project, in the detailed planning that we need to have, and some phases that we can monitor in milestones that we can manage. The same way that we have some strengths in Agile, we also have some strengths in traditional approach. And you need to balance these factors, these points in your project. Balancing between Agile and traditional, normally you are tending to one side or another. If your project have more components in the traditional way, probably your communication, your management will have more characteristics of a traditional way. If your project have more agile components or adaptive components, you're gonna have some more points or more strategies or more methods that are related to agile. You need to identify these components in your project to see how you're gonna balance these. Normally, when we talk about a project that involves development, we can have the beginning of the project where we're going to analyze, when we're going to define the project in a more traditional way. And during the development, testing, and deployment, we can work in an agile way. But this could change from project to project. The importance here is that you try to identify the components, each kind of components in your project that adopt agile or traditional way, and you use the tools and the methods corresponding to each one. Very important, stakeholder alignment. It's vital that the stakeholder understand when and why each approach is used. In this case, having a clear communication it's mandatory. It's not because you know that working in a hard way that every stakeholder, every member of your project have the same vision, the same perception. You need to align the strategy of delivering your project with all stakeholders. They need to understand why you're going to choose traditional way, why you're going to choose agile way on each component. And the benefits of balancing this. Why you are doing this? Why you are not adopting one unique approach? Why you need to use hybrid and traditional in this project? What are the benefits of each model, each approach, each framework? And you need to make this communication clear to get the buy-in of these stakeholders in your project. When you're talking about hybrid projects, we are always talking about change and scope adjustments because we are assuming that we have a hybrid, an agile component in this project. So how to stay on track during these changes? First, you need to expect the unexpected. So even if you have a detailed plan, change will happen and will arise on any project. Second, you need to embrace agility. Agility is better, works better for change than traditional. So use an interactive nature to make the necessary adjustments and quickly integrate feedback in your project. Keep the blueprint. While you are embracing change, ensure that the core project objective are not lost. Always try to keep visible, keep perceivable by everyone the main objective of your project. Despite all changes that will come, you need to keep the blueprint of your project. Document everything. I'm not fan of documentation just by the fact of having documents, but document it's a way that will avoid you a lot of troubles, especially when you talk about change. Every single change must be documented and must be approved. Don't change anything in your project that is not approved and that is not documented. And finally, stakeholder communication. Once this change is approved, make the stakeholder aware as soon as possible. Keep stakeholders informed about every change. This will ensure that these stakeholders are aligned with the project and they are well informed with the project, and they will collaborate with any future change in your project. Feedback loop and continuous engagement. When we talk about hard project, inside the project, we have moments where we move from traditional to agile and vice versa. And when it comes to getting some feedbacks, the way we get feedbacks is different on each approach. When you talk about agile, we should have frequent iteration-based feedback. This is the main characteristic of agile, is to have a frequent and feedback based on iteration. It should evolve product serves as peer stakeholders input. Stakeholders, especially the customer, the user, are the people that will really improve your product. And this will enhance adaptability and responsiveness in your project. On the other hand, when you talk about traditional, we are talking about milestones or phase-based feedback. We get feedback normally on each milestone. That's when we achieve this milestone, we get information about the project status and how it's going. It normally aligns with a long-term project objectives. We don't need in traditional way to have many feedbacks during the project. Normally we have these feedbacks after a long term period of the project. And of course, this reduces the scope creep and aligns with predefined goal. Changes in traditional components are less frequent than in agile. So when we talk about hybrid, we are talking about having regular check-ins to make sure the alignment with strategic objectives. Flexibility to adapt while adhering to a large project roadmap. So here is the secret. The secret in hybrid environment is that you need to really balance the frequency with the level of information that you need on each moment. At the same time, you need to define how long you need to see the vision that you need to have in your reports, in your communication, to answer to your stakeholders. So the point here is to have this flexibility to adapt and change your communication, change your process as you need. If you are in a moment in your project that you have a more focus on traditional methods, of course the communication at this moment will not be so frequent as if you are in an agile moment of your project. How to collect and implement feedback. Feedback is very important when you talk about stakeholder management, because it's when you know how the stakeholders are perceiving your project. The same way that we use it in identifying stakeholders, we can use it here. We can have surveys and questionnaires where we capture quantitative data, or it's effective when you have a large group of stakeholders. You also can have one-on-one meetings where you get more personalized information. And we can also have a group workshop, a feedback from a group in a workshop where you can make more iterative between these people. We can have digital feedback when you get remote questionnaires or surveys, get information in real world, in real time from different stakeholders, especially if you have stakeholders working remotely. And after this, you need to review your feedback and evaluate the feasibility of this feedback. Also, you can prioritize and implement changes as you need. When you talk about stakeholder engagement, it's important that you keep this engagement in an ongoing process. And we can follow this process to keep the stakeholders engaged and aligned with the project. So the first, you gather the feedback, so you collect the feedback, you collect the information, and you adapt the information based on the concerns of the stakeholders. You're going to analyze and implement some actions. So you're going to look at the comments to find useful information. You're making the appropriate change to the project. You communicate change, so you update the stakeholders about this input, and you ensure transparency and clarity. You review the outcomes, so you are assessing the impact of these changes and evaluate the alignment with project goals. And then you're going to repeat this process, emphasizing the ongoing nature of this process and make adjustments and adaptations to evolve this process in your group. It's very important that you celebrate victories, wins, and acknowledging challenges with your stakeholders. These will really help you to keep the stakeholders engaged in your project. Celebrate the wins. It's not only to acknowledge a result, but also will recognize the effort and recognize the team that the people that have worked on this result. This will boost the morale of the team and the confidence on the team, and will also increase the trust of your stakeholders. So you will solidify the relationship between all participants on this result. Acknowledging, it's a little bit different, because when we talk about acknowledging, it's that we need to accept and understand that some challenge need to be faced. In this case, it's important that you promote the transparency, being upfront about each challenge, and reporting, communicating this challenge to the people, the stakeholders. You get collaboration. You need to rely the team to find solutions, and you need to make assure that your stakeholders will be kept informed and get their commitment to this challenge, so they will be really involved on the solution. So that's what I have to say about the stakeholder engagement and management in hybrid projects. I hope you have enjoyed this video, and I hope you have learned about stakeholder management. And keep following us in our YouTube channel, because the next video I'm gonna talk about resource allocation in hybrid projects. This is a series of videos about hybrid project management, and I'm trying to keep this sequence in a good way, give you information in a sequence that will have connection with between each video. So the next video, we talk today about stakeholders, and the next video I'm gonna talk about resource allocation. So if you like it, give me a thumbs up and follow my channel to make sure that you're gonna be advised to the other videos about hybrid project management. So thank you, and see you in the next video.